DeSantis has fired campaign staff amid a cash crunch as he continues to lag far behind Trump in the polls. He has not really been able, these are both in state polls and in national polls. So when we look at the early state polls, but also the national polls, he's just not really getting above that 20%. And Donald Trump is in the 50s, sometimes 60s. So, I mean, a huge gap. Donald Trump, who has not always been the strongest grassroots fundraiser, I think some of that is just because he's Trump. And people say, do I really need to give Donald Trump money? Outraised DeSantis by another $15 million this last reporting cycle. So people are questioning, one is DeSantis even going to make it through? Two, could someone else? There's money still on the sidelines. The Koch brothers, for instance, have got like $200 or $300 million they put together. They were going to get it to DeSantis. They've decided not to right now.
Yeah, at least to hold for a while.
Would that go to Tim Scott? Does Tim Scott have the ability to make a jump that quickly?
When people hear that, they hear tens of millions or whatever it would be. What does that mean? Because I don't think people understand what that means for, I guess, profile. All of a sudden, you go from can it really take? Is all you need money to really get that profile up? Because we've seen some people have the money and not really work. We've seen other people come from nothing. And you're like, oh, where's that coming from? It's because they have backing.
I think if you're a good candidate like Tim Scott, who raised a good amount for where he was, he raised like $6 million.
Who on paper and on stage.
Right. So
solid.
If he gets an influx of money, that, yes, it could, because he's already a good candidate. If you're a bad candidate, which I think DeSantis is kind of showing, you can have as much money as you want, and no. It doesn't mean you're. Listen, I worked for Jeb Bush. Yeah. We had the most money. Very similar to DeSantis. Came out of Florida, huge staff. The only difference was we were actually polling in first place.
Yeah.
And had a lot of general support, and it just never connected. Yeah. We never connected with the voters, and Jeb never connected with the voters, and he would admit that it just didn't
click.
Work.
And he was beloved in Florida also, same kind of idea.
And DeSantis just seems like every time he goes out, he's not clicking with supporters.
Honestly, it's going to be one of those decisions where he needs to figure out whether he keeps going, or just get yourself back to Florida and let's pretend this didn't happen for a couple months. Yeah. And I mean that in the nicest way, because
before you go to total war and get embarrassed,
or show up at debates. And I think you do the first debate and you see what happens, see if anything happens. I think a lot of us who are more of political news junkie kind of people will watch that debate even without a President Trump involved. But that doesn't mean it's going to sway opinions. So,
no, because most people won't. That may have been a miscalculation by the DeSantis peoples. They didn't realize how strong the support still was for the majority of Republican voters for this primary. That they weren't too tired of Trump after 6 years. That, in fact, they thought he was wronged and they want him back. And that so far, through all of the controversies, through all of the indictments, they're sticking with him.
I think if you had 4 years of like a relatively quiet Democratic presidency, maybe you had a better chance of a DeSantis or all this
economy.
But when you see the difference between when he left office, even during COVID, I mean, even during the hardest of times on in our on our history, our current generation's history, compared to where things are now, it feels pretty drastic. And I think people do see, well, at least we know what we're getting ourselves into with President Trump.